Hello and welcome to another episode of The Brothers Discuss. I am Alex.
And I'm Chris.
So, Chris, last episode we gave our predictions for the Oscars this year. Now that some more award shows have happened, are you still sticking with your picks?
Yeah, for the most part, I still think it's gonna be Oppenheimer's night. It's gonna be a pretty big sweep. Yeah, not much has really changed as far as predictions, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm still sticking with what I chose even after the SAG Awards, so there we go. So let's talk some movies. So the first movie I'm going to talk about is Drive Away Dolls, the Coen brother movie. So I went into Drive Away Dolls knowing that Ethan Coen maybe brings the comedy stylings a little more than Joel, and I really like Joel's solo film that he did a few years ago, The Tragedy of Macbeth. I thought that was really great visually, and I was interested to see Drive Away Dolls for that reason, so I can compare the two, and I really enjoyed it. I didn't think it was amazing or anything like that, but I had a lot of fun with it. It's very quirky and silly, and I like the two lead performances a lot. A lot of the bigger name actors that show up in bits like Matt Damon and Mr. Fantastic, the Mandalorian, Pedro Pascal, they're fun in their small roles as well. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
So probably back around January. So my memory's kind of a little faded on this, but I did see the Mean Girls remake, which
let me ask you this, actually. Have you ever seen the original Mean Girls?
So yeah, I saw the original Mean Girls like a couple months ago, maybe back in October, November. I didn't even know like a remake was really even happening until like maybe around December.
Mm-hmm.
And truth be told, when I saw like, oh, new Mean Girls, my first reaction was that it's gonna be like one of these like legacy sequels where it's like all the same characters. But no, it's a remake, but it's also kind of more of a film adaptation of the Broadway musical they made for Mean Girls. So it's a little different in that way, but I guess I'll talk about the original Mean Girls first because I watched that, had a really great time with it. It's just a really like solid film. It's absolutely hilarious, very memorable and iconic. And this one, it's kind of hard to judge because you kind of have those like standards with the first movie. The definitely highest point of the movie is Renee Rapp as Regina George. She does an absolutely great job, especially vocally with her songs. I forget the actress's name, but for Katie, it's Betty Brant in the new Spider-Man movies.
Oh, her.
Yes. She was terrible in this. Oh. Absolutely terrible, especially in the songs. She just does not have a really great vocal range. And I haven't seen the Broadway musical, but I have listened to some of the songs after I watched the movie. It is night and day with some of them. So, I don't think the remake is absolutely like terrible. Like it looks pretty, there's some really nice like choices with cinematography and lighting during the songs. And some of the performances actually are pretty good, especially with the plastics. But overall, I mean, it's just kind of, it went completely under the radar for me, and I'm sure it did for a lot of people. So you're not really missing out on much if you skip this, but there's some good stuff there. But I think if you're looking for a good musical experience of Mean Girls, just watch the Broadway musical. As far as the songs go, I think they're way better in there. So
there you go. So we saw Dune Part 2. Let's just jump straight into the big film of the year. I watched Dune Part 1 in its re-release, which was a lot of fun to experience on the big screen again. There was a lot more people in the theater this time compared to when I saw it for the first time. Yeah, Dune 1 is really good. Dune 2 is probably better. It kind of has that, similar to Batman Begins to Dark Knight in terms of, I understand that, I mean, we love Batman Begins. It might be our favorite of the three films, but everything is kind of improved, dare I say, in The Dark Knight. And there's a lot more characters that you follow, and it's such a spectacle. it's funny watching this after, Star Wars and Attack on Titan and all these other things that have borrowed from Dune over the years. And you watch the original one, it's like, oh, Anakin Skywalker and all his political allegory is it's just all taken from this.
Mhm.
Dune is just the OG sci-fi epic, and Dune 2. It's a tremendous film, and the performances are all very good. But I want to shout out Austin Butler, who's really, really good in the movie. And
Space Elvis.
I don't know what to say because the advertising is very vague. And if you don't know the story of Dune going into this, there's a lot of surprises in this film. I know a little bit about Paul Atreides and the kind of character he would become, but there are aspects of that I did not see coming, and I don't know about. And those felt like a real genuine surprises and made me go, oh, where is it going from here? But yeah, I thought this was excellent. It's definitely a big screen experience film. It's very, very good. I liked it a lot, and I recommend everyone see it. But you, Chris, what did you think?
So I guess little context, I haven't seen the first Dune since it came out.
Oh,
So I kind of have it, not really different experience, but like just different, going into it, I had like different kind of expectations and context. But I never really felt like lost because I haven't seen the first one. It kind of just picks up right after, and everything just kind of pieces back together. But it's not like incredibly dependent on like the little things in the first one as much. At least I didn't really get that vibe, because I got the basic ideas. Like, yeah, Oscar Isaac, Paul Atreides' dad died. There's this brewing war between the two factions. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of getting this. And so yeah, that really didn't like hurt my movie experience at all, and I had a really, really great time with this. Definitely, yes, big movie theater experience. I saw this in IMAX.
I'm jealous.
It was so good, yeah. And yeah, I mean, I could talk about this just for hours, but I love just like the themes of like war and corruption and transformation. And really, it's like everything that I loved about the first movie. We kind of said it here. It's just, I think it's a little bit better in this one. It's kind of just amplified more. I really loved Paul and Zendaya's characters. Their relationship, I thought, really worked in this movie. I guess we won't really talk about spoilers just because it's so new.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't want to really spoil it for anything because there's some great surprises here.
Yeah, yeah. But, you really feel for those two characters, especially at the end of the movie. It's just like you're kind of like cautiously optimistic by the end of like where things are going to go. Because I do think part 3 is obviously inevitable at this point. But yeah, and then, oh my gosh, I haven't even talked about like just the cinematography in this movie and everything. Absolutely gorgeous. Like all the wide shots that in this movie is really fantastic. And I'm gonna butcher his name, so I'm not even gonna say it. But the director, he obviously directed the first one and Arrival, and he's really, really great. I think he's the best director today that can do like scale in movies and like absolutely like represent that visually. He's so good at it, and yeah, absolutely delivers it here. So definitely 2 thumbs up for me for Dune Part 2.
Excellent. One last film I'll talk. Well, I mean, there's more I'm going to talk about, but the last serious film I'm going to talk about is The Zone of Interest, which we did in our last episode. I mentioned this was the only Oscar nominated film for Best Picture I've not seen, but now that's complete. So I've seen all 10 of the nominees, and I really, really liked The Zone of Interest. It's a very quiet film. It's mostly shot almost entirely in wide shots where you don't ever really get a close-up of a character. I think there's one time we do, and it's not even on their face. Like the camera is not quite profile, but like a little further back, so it's like underneath their jawline and up to like the side of their face. Like that's the close-up that we have of a character in the film, and it's disorienting. And I believe that's with purpose, because we are following a family who live next door to a concentration camp during World War II. And the father of the house is a Nazi general. And the mother, played by Sandra Holler from Anatomy of a Fall, she is horrible in her own right as well. Like our protagonists, for lack of a better term in this film, are really evil people, but they're like naive evil. You know, like they're so oblivious to how terrible they are. Like there's a scene where the father of the house is talking about how they might have to move because he might be stationed somewhere else. And she's like, no, we built a family here. And they're living next door to something very horrible happening. It's like throughout the film, you just hear like screaming or shooting at random times, and you know what it is. And you, as an audience member, kind of get desensitized to it because it's just happening throughout the film, which is scary in and of itself. It's a very, very good film. When it ended, I wasn't sure how I felt about it, but then as it sat with me more, I realized how interesting a film it was and the creative choices they made, and it's very good. It's a hard film to recommend because it is so hopeless and it's not exciting at all. It's the exact opposite of exciting, and you don't like the characters. Like, why would I want to sit through that? Like, it doesn't sound very enticing. But if this is the type of film you might want to check out, I would definitely recommend it. I don't think it's going to win anything at the Oscars tonight besides the International Feature Oscar, but it really is one of the best films of the year because it's just totally unique, but it's not exactly the most rewatchable. Like, it depends if that floats your boat or not, but it's great. But it kind of gives me, not to just talk about the Oscars as the end-all be-all, but there is a change in recent years in terms of the types of films that get nominated for Best Picture. And something like this, people might see as, oh, it's a World War II film. We've seen plenty of them win awards and things like that. And a film I feel people will compare it to the most is The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. And it's not like that at all. I think what happens in that film is absolutely devastating, but this isn't that. Like, you don't have a character to latch onto that you understand their innocence or anything like that. It's just terrible people that you're following and going about their like day to day. It's like a slice of life of bad people, and it's not like we never see any murders committed in the film, and like all the deaths that occur happen off screen. Like, you just hear things in the background. To me, it's not the type of film that would be accessible to the Academy because they're just likely to watch a screener on TV. And I don't know if it would be as effective that way, especially if you're expecting a different type of World War II movie or Nazi film. But I'm glad it's gotten some recognition. So it means that people like me are aware of it and see it. So I'm very glad for that. Well, I think we're going to switch the podcast over to some comic book movie and TV show talk. I will start off by saying we have talked about for a while about Madam Web and its terrible and trailer and like why on earth this was even being made in the first place. And I did indeed see Madam Web by myself on Valentine's Day. You have not seen this, have you?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, I don't want to be mean. I don't want to just shit on something because it's funny to do so, but it is legitimately probably the worst comic book adaptation I've ever seen, especially one that I've paid to see in a theater. So something like Steel is probably a worse movie, but this is a Sony Pictures movie coming like not even a year after the Spider-Verse movie and only a couple years after No Way Home. Sony should be better at the choices they make about the movies they set in their Spider-Verse world. Like, this just absolutely did everything wrong. The cinematography is not very good. It has these really terrible push-ins at the beginning that I don't think they do for the rest of the movie. Like, why did the beginning look like this and not the rest of it? It has baffling editing. It's got really terrible dialogue for basically every character. The acting in it is really bad. And I like Dakota Johnson. I've seen her be really good in certain things, and this was not one of them. I don't know if she chose to play the character in this sarcastic manner or if she just really didn't want to be there, but she's not very good in the film at all. And like I said, I like her as an actress, but she's not good in this. If anything, the best performance in the movie, and I'm sorry to say that, I'm a man saying that the best performance of the movie was from a man, but it was indeed Adam Scott as young, sexy Uncle Ben. I thought he gave the best performance and was the most likable character. Peter Parker gets born in the movie. I'm just going to talk spoilers. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Peter Parker gets born in the movie, and his mom is played by Emma Roberts, and it's really weird. There's one bit in the movie that I thought showed some creativity. So, to set the scene, at the beginning of the movie, when Madam's Web mother was in the Amazon researching spiders right before she died, and I don't think it was the Amazon, but anyway, she gets killed by the bad guy, Ezekiel Sims, because she's looking for a particular type of spider that will give you spider powers, basically. And Madam Web gets saved by these spider people that live in the trees, and they get a spider to bite her, and she gives birth to Madam Web, to Cass. So this is how she has powers that make her see into the future. They only get awoken when she dies briefly, like when she drowns, because she's a paramedic and was saving someone from their car that was like teetering off a bridge. So there's a scene where the three other spider women that are in the movie are hanging out in the woods or in the jungle that's apparently near New York City, and they decide they're hungry and they don't want to wait there anymore, so they go to a diner nearby, and Madam Web drives up in this taxi she had stolen, and she goes to the diner and finds them, and Ezekiel shows up and kills everyone there. And while he's killing everyone, the song that's playing in the background is Toxic by Britney Spears, because the film is set in 2003. And Ezekiel's power is that he's got this spider venom that he poisons people with, so that's why they chose Toxic. So, but anyways, so the creative bit that I wanted to bring up is that was all a flash forward, and Madam Web starts to hear the song play on the radio in the taxi she had stolen, and is like, "Oh, I've got to get to the diner before the end of the song, otherwise Sims is going to show up and kill them." And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of creative," but that was it. That's all I thought was creative and good about the movie. The visual effects are terrible. And I don't think that's an end-all, be-all, or make or break for me in a film, because Lord knows we've seen some terrible visual effects in big-budget superhero films in recent years, but that final fight that happens on the top of that Pepsi building, like the famous Pepsi building, is so terrible looking. It reminds me of the first Venom movie, where you've just got two piles of goo and you can barely tell what's going on in that final fight. It's like that, but worse. And Madam Web goes blind somehow. I don't know if I missed something, but I've seen some other people were confused that it happened, but it happened. So she goes blind, and she wears like big Bret Hart sunglasses, and it's embarrassing. Like, the whole film is just a big embarrassment. I feel bad. I genuinely feel bad for everyone involved. The ADR in the movie, I'll stop talking about this movie in a second, but the ADR in this movie rivals that of The Room. Like, it's so bad, and it's mostly with Ezekiel. I don't know if when they tested this with audiences, they couldn't understand his accent or what the deal was, but I think every single line of his that he has is dubbed over, and it's really obvious and bad looking. And I couldn't help but notice that actor on the poster, like they cropped out with like the design of the poster, like her web connects them all. Like they kind of crop out the top of his head and the bottom of his beard, so they really make him look like John Wick. like it looks like Keanu Reeves is in the movie fighting Madam Web, which I'd rather watch that. But so I think the marketing department were trying to fool some people there, so I feel bad for that actor. But yeah, just a terrible movie. It rivals Catwoman. It's just so bad. Do you have any desire to ever see this movie?
Well, I don't know. Like kind of a curiosity desire. Because, I mean, I know I'll probably see it eventually. I don't know if it'll be like when it comes out on Blu-ray or while it's still struggling to survive at a movie theater. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I'm sure eventually I'll get around to it.
The only saving grace for me moving forward is that Russell Crowe is in the Kraven the Hunter movie, but I don't know if that's enough for me to see it or at least pay to see it. Like if you and I watched it as a joke sometime, that's one thing, but I don't think I can pay money to see these movies because, again, I was interested in Madam Web in like this bad movie kind of way. Like why young sexy Madam Web as a movie? Like why have they made this? Like, it's not funny bad, it's just bad. And it has its attempts at being funny that fall really flat. Like, Madam Web tries to climb a wall at one point and just falls down. And it's meant to be very funny, like a very funny and silly moment. But it does not fit the tone of the rest of the movie at all. Again, I'm very embarrassed for everyone involved that they agreed to be in this. Like Sydney Sweeney, like whose career is really taking off, and she's like a big name, and she's just in this crappy Madam Web movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, Venom got a sequel. Like, Venom is to blame for all of this. Just as a quick aside, like if Venom failed, we probably would not get all of these films. But it came out in 2018 at a time when people thought they had to see everything leading up to Avengers Endgame. Like not knowing that Venom was not part of it. People like us will know that, but the general public are like, oh, a new Marvel movie. It's Venom from Spider-Man. I know him. They have to see it like Ant-Man and the Wasp or Captain Marvel. Marvel, as in Marvel Studios, really messed up in a lot of ways. Like it worked at the time, but now it's messed up that they convinced everyone that you have to see everything to understand what's going on in all the films and to be rewarded that way. Like, it's a great marketing strategy if you want your movies to make a lot of money. But when you put out 4 movies and 4 TV shows in the span of a year, that's why we've got this this anti-MCU agenda going on online at the moment. People talk about it used to be better. Like, it didn't all used to be better, but it wasn't that it was always leading to something. I get really annoyed when I hear that. Like, it was definitely not always the case with the MCU, but it definitely was the case when it was at its peak during like that Phase 3 era from Civil War to Endgame. Like, that's what they told everyone. That's why something like Captain Marvel made $1 billion and its sequel did not. So now that you've muddled up your universe with all these things people have to watch and haven't, now there is less interest because, A, you aren't building to something that you were telling people you were building to, and B, there's just too much to keep up with. So that's part of why Venom made so much money, and because Venom made so much money, it gave Sony the confidence, the foolish confidence, to make Madam Web and Morbius and Kraven the Hunter. It's funny of the films I've mentioned, except for Kraven because that's not out yet. The first Venom is the best, like far and away, and it's not a very good movie. Like at least Venom 2 has personality, and this Madam Web movie is so freaking bland. So yeah, I was interested in this train wreck Sony Spider-Man universe. I'm done now. These movies aren't entertaining bad. They're just bad, so I'm done. Well, I guess speaking of Marvel, we got some trailers, especially over Super Bowl weekend. We got that Deadpool Wolverine trailer, which I just want to talk about briefly because from a trailer making standpoint, I found it interesting. They didn't want to show Wolverine in it, so it was kind of reminiscent a bit of No Way Home and the marketing of that. I mean, we already know Hugh Jackman is in the yellow suit, and this isn't going to be a surprise to people. But it is an interesting strategy, and it's clearly worked because it is officially the most watched trailer of all time now on YouTube. It's an interesting trailer. Like, I don't know. Like, Deadpool is not my sense of humor, but I don't really have any interest in the movie from that standpoint. Like, my interest more comes from, well, the X-Men are probably going to be in it, and what are they going to do, and why the hell is Jennifer Garner Elektra in it? Like, and I don't care for the use of Cassandra Nova in this. Like, that's meh. Patch is in it. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. It's like Deadpool's not really my thing. I think it's interesting, to say the least, to see Hugh Jackman back. I'm not like one of those people where I'm kind of like craving to have more of him. It's like, no, he had a good thing. He had a good run, and Logan was a great send-off. So, even though this isn't really interfering with any of that, supposedly, it's like I'm excited to see more Wolverine, but I'm not like, let's just say like the world wouldn't stop spinning if he wasn't in it, really just kind of my only thing is I want to see like how much Marvel goes into the R-ratedness with this movie, because that's the big thing, is that this is our first R-rated Marvel movie. And we had Echo, which was TVMA, and which I've only seen one episode of that. But so Marvel's kind of getting more into, they're dipping their toes more into that. We kind of saw that with like Multiverse of Madness being a little bit more horror and gory. And we're kind of getting that more with Marvel nowadays. So that's really kind of where my interest is going. And yes, there's going to be a lot of X-Men cameos. We already know Pyro's going to be in the movie.
Pyro.
That was not on my 2024 bingo card. So I mean, we'll see. I will say, like, I am kind of more interested in this than most other Marvel movies going forward. But again, it's just more so about some technical angles in the movie, so sure. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if you've been keeping up, but there's rumors that Henry Cavill is signing up for Marvel for a role, and the big rumor is that he's going to be Cyclops. What do you think of this?
I mean, I guess that could work. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I think Henry Cavill, and this is no shame to him, but I think he just has too big of a bod to play Cyclops.
Well, that's the thing. So Henry Cavill as Cyclops is something I've thought of years ago when it looked like he wasn't going to return as Superman. And I'm talking like before Black Adam and stuff like that. I was like, oh, I could see that. Like a very stoic character. Like I could see that. It's funny now that we might be getting that. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Like if they cast him, that at least tells me they want to do something with Cyclops. So that is encouraging, just as a fan of that character. And I'm sure it would excite Henry Cavill fans because, I feel a lot of them felt wronged by DC, but that would tell me that there's a strategy behind it. So I'm a little hopeful in that sense. I mean, he may not look slim, look like Slim Summers, but he would look like 90s jacked Cyclops, so that's fine with me. I guess the other trailer we got recently was the trailer for X-Men 97, which comes out in 10 days' time, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. What did you think of this trailer?
Well, I mean, I'm not the audience for this because I've only seen like the first couple episodes of the animated series.
You gotta binge it.
I'll get to it eventually. There's a lot of shows that I'm trying to catch up on at the moment, but you're really the big target audience for this show, so.
That I am. So But that said, it'll disappoint people that I'm not super stoked for this. And I'm a big fan of the animated series. Like, there's a part of me that goes like, if this was a new show from scratch, I'd be interested, and I'm certainly interested in the show. I'm interested, but I'm not excited. Is my main feeling. Again, as a big Cyclops fan, the ending with him being like, to me, my X-Men, makes me think they might do some real character stuff with Cyclops, and that's neat. Like him and Magneto are kind of butting heads over running the school and things like that. The animation, I don't think looks very good. And when I see people say, "Oh, this looks like a '90s cartoon," and I'm like, "It does. It sure doesn't to me." I understand the art style being different. Like, if you don't want to make it look exactly like that, or it's too difficult to make it look like that, I understand that. And I can even forgive the animation being different if it at least looked like the show design-wise. But it doesn't. So the animation doesn't look the same, and the designs of the characters don't look the same. So it just looks like a totally new show. So why is it a sequel? I mean, I know why, from a business perspective, why it's a sequel. And it's meant for people like me. Like, this is targeted to someone like me. It's not targeted to, like, kids. But it's purely being made based on nostalgia and the fact that the X-Men cartoon is one of the most rewatched things on Disney Plus, like when it was launched. So it's not being made with honest intentions of like, oh, we have a story and a good idea of how to continue this. It's not like Twin Peaks: The Return. It's a popular thing. Let's bring it back. The animation, it's 3D animation made to look like 2D, but it just comes off as very stiff. And there's been talks like lately, ever since this trailer came out, like John Semper, the idiot that ran the the Spider-Man animated series from the 90s, is like, well, I'd be down for like a revival of my show. And that is a show where you can do more with, because the X-Men show had a legit ending, whereas Spider-Man ended on a cliffhanger where you can tell more stories. But John Semper, like, people aren't aware of how annoying he was on Twitter or Facebook over the years, but him coming out of the woodwork saying, like, I'm waiting on my call or whatever, and they owe me a lot for what I did for Venom and Morbius or the Spider-Verse. Just such nonsense. But that is a show where we've had so many Spider-Man adaptations, and that one ranks really low of the good ones to me. Whereas X-Men, the best adaptation of the X-Men to most people is the animated series. It's funny, like, if they were bringing back X-Men Evolution, like, I think I'd be a little more interested, because even though that show has an ending, like, the passage of time, like okay, they were teenagers in the show, and them being adults now, like, there's something there that you can tell. This just being, it's the X-Men, like, again, I mean, I'm glad that people are excited for this, like, this cast of characters of the X-Men. Again, I'm interested. I will watch it all, but I don't have hopes that I'll enjoy it much. And like, I really don't like sounding so negative, like, especially when this is something where I'm the target demographic. Like, they're meant to be making this for people like me. And I don't like just being cynical about this stuff, because this is stuff I grew up with, and tastes change with time, but that X-Men animated show left a huge imprint on me as a kid. Like, I mean, hopefully this is a great show. Like, hopefully I look back and I'm like, wow, I was totally wrong. That was a real well-rounded show. Hopefully. I mean, as an outsider, in a sense, like, do you have any excitement for the show?
I mean, it's just kind of interesting. Like, again, I'm definitely not the target audience here, but it is interesting that after all these years, this was kind of like one of the last things I thought would have gotten a revival. And I feel like really kind of my excitement with this is like, if this does well and if people respond positive to this, are other shows like this, like the Spider-Man animated series, or even like Spectacular Spider-Man? Is there hope for like a revival and continuation for those shows that legit were left on cliffhangers? And because I do feel like that is in demand for fans, like people would definitely want to see that. So I'm curious to see really just kind of how this show does with people. So
Yeah, but if it looks like the animation like this, like I don't think I would want that personally.
yeah.
I'll give the show this. Calling it X-Men 97, like this is like the first of these like revival concepts or projects that gets the title right. You know,
Hmm.
there's a comic book series of like Batman 89 or Superman 78 where they take place after those movies, but that's not really correct because it's like calling it Batman 89, you're just referring to the movie, but it takes place after 89. Whereas calling it X-Men 97, it's, you know, taking place where things left off with that original show. So it got it right at least.
Hmm.
I do want to go in with clear expectations and not just go in expecting it to be bad because then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think most of the time when you go in expecting something to be bad, you're not going to like it. Like if you go in thinking this is not my thing, then the film or show has a harder time of changing your mind. It is funny seeing online how people have been down on the MCU lately, and then they release trailers or teasers for like three things, and suddenly everyone is back on board, and it's all Fox related stuff. Like it was Deadpool and Wolverine, X-Men 97, and that image of Fantastic Four they released on Valentine's Day. I mean, those were the announcements of the cast, but let's talk about that real quick. I like this idea of like setting the film in the 60s.
I do too. And
I don't know if it's going to match that aesthetic, but
I
so
have
far
hope.
so
I
good.
mean, you have oh, what's his name? It was the director of WandaVision doing
Matt
this.
Sheckman?
Yeah, and you know, his WandaVision, like that was really good, and that got like all those different aesthetics, you know, work together both thematically and visually. So it's like, you know, I have pretty good hope for this Fantastic Four remake.
Yeah, and what do you think of the cast?
Cast is pretty solid. I do think, you know, it is kind of weird that we're 2 for 2 with fan casting Mr. Fantastic, but um, you know,
I
but
still don't see Pedro Pascal in this kind of role. Like I'm trying to separate, you know, it's not going to be Joel from The Last of Us or The Mandalorian,
mhm.
but maybe him being like this excited, nerdy scientist, maybe it could work. Who knows?
We'll see.
Uh,
We'll see. I mean, he does have a really good range. He's a very
he
good actor.
does.
But
I mean,
yeah,
we
well,
saw him in Wonder Woman 84. Yeah, I like the look of it, but it is just funny seeing everyone be back in love with Marvel, and it's like, there you go. It's just like, what have you done for me lately? That's what it boils down to.
yeah.
Uh, so let's jump across the comic book store to the DC side of things. So on February 29th, which was Superman's birthday, I mean, I hesitate to call this an announcement because when it's just a visual, but, you know, we got our first look at the Superman logo, the big S. What do you
Mhm.
think of this?
I mean, you don't really see too much of the costume, but you know, it looks pretty good. I'm actually gonna pull it up real fast because
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to describe it to people, the logo is very reminiscent of the Kingdom Come costume, which I believe was an Alex Ross design, where at first it looks like a diamond, like a line through a diamond, but if you look at it from a distance, it's clearly like the Superman S. So I kind of like that, where it kind of makes it feel more alien. Like it doesn't look like the letter S from planet Earth. So I like that idea of the design. But the image they showed of the S is kind of covered in snow. So it tells you, Fortress of Solitude, maybe? Like that was my
yeah,
main takeaway because we haven't had that in a while. So it looks very neat. And then there's James Gunn also had like did a table read and took a selfie together.
hmm
But that is the big notable thing with the logo is that it's very clearly coming from the Kingdom Come comic book storyline. We have a official cast list now, and there's like retro characters coming in like Otis and Teschmacher. And we have Justice League members, and then there's the Authority, and we know that Nicholas Hoult is legit bald in this. Like, they're not going to hide the fact that Lex Luthor is bald. It's not like he's trying to hide it. And I think the casting of the film is good, and the throwback nature of some of these characters is exciting as well. You know, as well as some of like the super characters in this. Like, they're not like the obvious choices, which is nice. And like, you know, like the Green Lantern that's in this is, in the comics, he's the third Green Lantern. So maybe they'll acknowledge that in this, I would think. But I am very hopeful for the film. I mean, the other major thing we should talk about is that the title change. It's not going to be Superman I almost called it Superman Lives. It's not going to be Superman Legacy. But it's just going to be Superman. Just plain simple Superman. What do you think of this?
I didn't even know that. Until
you didn't know that?
I didn't know that. I didn't know there was a title. I mean, you know, I never really had an issue with Superman Legacy, and I think also to differentiate like your movie with all the other Superman movies, it's like that's not a bad title. So I think that's kind of an interesting choice. I mean, I don't really care either way, you know. It's kind of like a same situation if you did like Batman or The Batman, you know. It's how you make your film that's really the big thing, and you know, the title.
Yeah, well, the way James Gunn put it is that when he started writing this film, it was called Superman Legacy, but when he finished it, he decided it was just going to be Superman.
Okay.
So you could look at this and go like, well, maybe this is like a higher up decision where you can't call a film Superman Legacy. It's going to confuse people. But James Gunn is the higher up. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to trust him in his choices there. I mean, I'm a little disappointed because I was kind of Superman Legacy. Like it sounds like Batman Forever or Batman Begins, where it feels like that kind of era of film, or even Superman Lives as an example. But to be fair, we've never actually had a Superman film just called Superman before, because the 78 film is just Superman the movie.
Yeah.
So now this will be referred to as Superman 25, I guess. But there is like a theory going around about what the story is going to be based on the logo that they showed off with the Kingdom Come logo. The theory is that people are speculating that this could be almost like a reverse Kingdom Come story. And for those that don't know or don't know about the Kingdom Come story, it's a Mark Waid story. It's about a far off future where like heroes are like outdated, and it's just time for like cool badass characters instead. So the idea is that it's like a return of like these old school heroes and what it means to be a hero. Like Superman entering a world with these heroes is what the theory is going to be, where it's like maybe these characters already exist, and what does Superman, like what makes Superman Superman? Like what does it mean to be old fashioned? Like instead of a hero returning, it's a hero entering is what people are speculating this could mean.
Okay.
And I really like the idea of Superman entering a world that is full of superheroes already, and like how does he deal with that? Like I'm intrigued by that idea because, you know, most Superman stories tell that like he's like the first superhero, so it'll be a neat twist. I'm excited for it. Like I like James Gunn as a creative person a lot. It was interesting hearing him talk about some of this stuff on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast, where the MCU had no secret identities besides Spider-Man, which was one of the things I didn't like about you know taking Spider-Man's secret identity away at the end of Far From Home. I was like, no, you can't undo that. Well, turns out you can. So a world full of secret identities and stuff, like that actually sounds interesting. You know, Superman coming into a world with all these heroes and he can figure out who these people are really easily. So that's intriguing. I don't know if that's what he's doing in the film, but when he mentioned that, I was like, well, you said it for a reason. I wonder what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else on Superman?
I don't really have much else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see. I'm still very excited for this movie, so
Yeah.
fingers crossed. And I will say, I really hope this movie is good because I don't think I can't catch a break with these damn DC movies. Like, I mean, look, for the past like 10 years, my excitement for DC films has been shaky at best, maybe. And look, I'm not going to dispute the fact that we've got some genuine gems during that time. Like, The Batman is one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. I love The Suicide Squad, and I enjoy Shazam. Like, I don't want to dismiss any of those movies. But with Superman, I would make the case we have not had like a legitimately really good Superman movie since 1978.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say, like, I've liked Superman Returns. I like bits of Superman 2. But none of them have been, like, good movies, like, legitimately great movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I want this to be really, really good. And if it turns out to be bad, I think I'm just done with DC movies. Like, granted, look, people are going to hate this no matter what because it's not the Zack Snyder universe. But if this gets off on the wrong foot, I'm just done. I'm done. So on that hopeful note, Chris, where can people find you?
You can find me over on Instagram and Letterboxd.
Nice. Same here. I'm also on Twitter or X. I'm on Blue Sky, and you can also find my video editing work for the Amazing Spider Talk podcast on their YouTube channel. So thank you all for listening. We'll see you all next time. Take care.